Good morning. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning political news show for Indiana. Our opening theme song is by Hoosier singer-songwriter Leslie Nuss, and my name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I am broadcasting from Bloomington. We've got another jam-packed week of news to discuss and two great guests to talk about it all with me. Deal or no deal in Iran? Trump claims another Republican scalp in Texas. Anti-ICE protests in New Jersey escalate. Leo XIV issues the first encyclical of his papacy, and Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith issues a fatwa against the planet's 2 billion Muslims. All of that and much more. But before we begin, you know the drill. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We don't have billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And if a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you right now, that's okay. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. You get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making the state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. That's HOOSLEFT. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Now, let's welcome this week's panelists, a couple of returning guests. First, she's visited all 92 counties in her campaign to be the Democratic nominee for Secretary of State, but today she's slumming it with us. It's Blythe Potter. Blythe, welcome.
This is not slumming it.
Long time no see.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody knows where I come down in the Secretary of State's race, but one thing I really like about you is that you are not afraid to hang out in unscripted environments like this one.
I do better in unscripted environments, much to some people's dismay.
Listen, life is unscripted, and you got to roll with the punches, right?
Yep.
Hey, another fighter who rolls with the punches, a returning guest here in this space. One of our regulars, one of our favorites. It's Chuck Gill. Chuck, welcome back.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Wherever Chuck goes, he brings the women who have run for state level office the last couple cycles with him. The last time you were here, you were on with Destiny Wells. So Chuck swims in big circles.
Well, I try to select the best people to be a part of, and that's the fun of it.
Thank you.
So listen, guys. Got an Army vet, got a Navy vet. All right, you two behave.
We get along great.
But let's get into this. We've got a lot to talk about this week, winging it a little bit today. My daughter just graduated high school yesterday. Had a lot of family in town. Congratulations to her. I am not as scripted as I normally am in this space, so we're going to do this thing. And let's begin where we have begun many of the last several weeks, as we are months now into this war. What is it? Whatever, with Iran. And so if you recall, last week when we were on the show, we were sort of like, oh, hey, a deal might be imminent. At least that's what they were saying at the time. But then, on Monday, Trump was wavering. He's like, well, it's mandatory now for Muslim countries to join the Abraham Accords to get an Iran deal. And then the same day, the U.S. military launched strikes in southern Iran, even while talks were going on in Qatar. On Tuesday, Iran accused the U.S. of violating the ceasefire and vowed retaliation. Then by Wednesday, the U.S. was conducting more strikes in Iran, while Trump was saying Iran was, quote, negotiating on fumes. Iran, for their part, lobbed some missiles at Kuwait, which were intercepted. And then the same day, Trump was threatening to blow up Oman, who were in negotiations with Iran to sort of jointly set up a tolling agency on the Strait of Hormuz. Not great there. But with all that going on, by Thursday, apparently there is a deal with the U.S. and Iranian negotiators agreeing to a 60-day memorandum of understanding to extend the ceasefire and launch nuclear talks. Well, okay, we heard that. The market reacted. And then by this weekend, Trump is like, oh, well, no, maybe not. Now I need more. So I don't know. Chuck, where the hell are we on this thing? Every time it seems like there's a deal, Trump is like, well, maybe we need a little bit more. And I can't help but think that it's always there's a market manipulation element going on here. They announce they've got some sort of deal. The market reacts. Stocks go up. Oil goes down. Insiders do what they do. The terms change. And they sell high. We've seen it again and again and again this administration.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep resonating with something I saw on the internet this week. It said the art of the guy who wrote The Art of the Deal is really having a struggle trying to put this one together. And I said, well, it's the art of the non-deal, I guess, is more accurate in this case, because we went from having a agreement for Iran, not getting nuclear weapons. I mean, we had a open Strait of Hormuz, which we could transit no problem. There wasn't any problems. To now, that is not going to be the case. How is that a viable deal for international trade in the U.S.? I don't see that very easily.
We had this deal, right? During the Obama administration, there was the JCPOA, and Iran was abiding by it, and they weren't building a nuclear weapon, and there were inspectors in there verifying this, and the strait was open, and on and on and on. And now, after this folly, this excursion, this incursion, whatever the hell they're calling it, now, Iran is in the driver's seat and demanding reparations to the tune of some $300 billion. Which now, of course, the administration would never straight up give them $300 billion. And they made a massive deal over Obama giving back something like $1.7 billion of Iranian money that was theirs and was being held. Well, a part of this deal, it appears, is a $300 billion investment fund pitched by Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his golfing buddy, Steve Witkoff. And, this is the same Jared Kushner who's already under investigation for cashing in on foreign investment funds. And to be fair, even the right is like, hey, this looks gross. This doesn't look good. This $300 billion fund. And maybe that's part of the reason Trump is like coming up with new demands to put a deal out there, because Republicans won't let him make this deal. Hawks like Roger Wicker, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and Mike Pompeo are panning this deal. Cruz is warning that Iran is still enriching uranium, and of course there's the financial stake of it all, but also a couple of Democrats are hitting Trump from the right on this. Ro Khanna is calling them out. I've got a story linked from Common Dreams in the show notes. That'll be up later this afternoon. But Khanna is calling out folks like Senator Cory Booker and Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who are hitting Trump from a sort of conservative point on this thing. Now, it is worth noting that Booker has taken over $800,000 from AIPAC, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz over $1.4 million. Khanna says that Democrats should be the anti-war party, support negotiations, and stop goading Trump into more conflict, which it appears that they are doing. Blythe, what do you think about that? A lot there.
I mean, the amount of trauma and psychological warfare coming from our government is astonishing. I mean, that's all there. I mean, this is insane. It is insane.
Yeah. The Iranians, I think, listen, they were attacked here. There was no imminent action by Iran that we know of that spurred the joint U.S.-Israel attack at the end of February that precipitated where we are now. I'm no fan of Iran or their regime, but I don't think they're wrong to demand some recompense for the damage that has been done here. I don't know if a $300 billion fund run by Jared Kushner is the right way to go about this. But I don't think we need Democrats out there just playing politics with this thing, saying, oh, well, this is a bad deal. We shouldn't take it. We should stay involved in war because that makes, folding makes Trump look weak. Blythe, what say you?
This right here puts an international spotlight on the same disconnect we see on the state level with Democrats. I mean, it is the same. It's the same argument. We have to worry about how we are being funded because stuff like this happens. And in the meantime, we're trying to build trust back with the public, with the Democratic Party, who has worse approval ratings than Donald Trump. So it's just this insane cycle. It's just a cycle, and it has got to stop. It has to stop.
Chuck, I'm going to give you the final word on the sort of Iran portion of the world at war this week before we turn to another front in this conflict. What is a deal going to get done? I feel like we're in the same place this weekend as we were last weekend, where it's like, oh, a deal's imminent. Wait, a deal's not imminent.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Do I believe a deal can be reached? Yes. Is it going to be as good as what we had? I sincerely doubt it, because we are not in a position of negotiating leverage. We have literally handed them everything in the universe that they wanted. And yeah, I mean, if there is going to be a deal, it's going to be on their terms, sadly enough. And it just shows the ineptitude of a guy who has no clue what he's doing in trying to execute foreign policy that's just not his forte. I mean, if it doesn't suit his needs, his ego building, it's never going to work.
He negotiates foreign policy like a mob boss, basically, and as long as there's something in it for all of the participants, especially all of these strongmen rulers involved, then maybe we can get something done. Now, one of the strongmen rulers involved in this is, of course, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who does not want a deal done at all. And that's part of the negotiations here. Iran is like, listen, we'll do a deal, but Israel has to be part of this thing as well. They have to quit attacking Lebanon. They have to quit attacking Gaza. It doesn't seem like they are interested in doing that at all. On Monday, Israel pounded Lebanon with fresh airstrikes, vowing to crush Hezbollah. Far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich called for 10 Beirut buildings to fall for every Hezbollah drone strike. Mind you, Beirut is a large metropolitan area, and the people there are not Hezbollah, right? On Tuesday, they ramped up strikes even more, killing at least 31 people with over 120 airstrikes on that day, one of the heaviest bombardments in weeks. This is all while technically a ceasefire is still active there as well. On Friday, Netanyahu confirmed that Israeli troops have crossed the Litani River, long considered the benchmark for pushing Hezbollah north. They've also struck areas in Beirut. Since this ceasefire began on April 16th, 55 children have been killed, along with 212 wounded. The death toll in Lebanon is now over 3,100. Over 1 million people have been displaced. Israel has also struck dangerously close to some UNESCO World Heritage sites in Lebanon, which, in addition to the civilian casualties, would also constitute a potential violation of the 1954 Hague Convention. I'm going to come right back to you here, Chuck. I don't think Israel wants a deal done. We've seen they have many of the far right folks in that government, including Smotrich, who we mentioned, including an Interior Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, including Defense Minister Israel Katz. They want the Greater Israel Project. They want to expand their territory. They want to fully take over Gaza. They want to expand into southern Lebanon. They're not going to slow down, and that's going to hamper this Iran deal. How do we? Is the U.S. and Israel seemingly like tied at the hip? We've got to like decouple somehow from this rogue regime.
Well, funny enough, well, not funny enough, but sadly, one, with Israel adopting a scorched earth approach on the Lebanon front, and then with our proposed National Defense Authorization Act, that there's a portion in there that is actually asking to more closely tie the United States military to the Israeli military in technology sharing, to counter unmanned systems and all war fighting domains, and just, I mean, it covers a myriad of things, and it just, all it does is basically integrates us more and more and ties us more together. So if Netanyahu stays in his ability to guide things and he wants to go further and further, this is just going to drag us just more and more along with it. So I agree. We have to, and I have to say that I'm actually rooting for Representative Massey, who is going to introduce a amendment on the floor to strip all that out. So now, would I say I ever would have thought Massey would have a good idea here? No, but these are weird times.
These are weird times, and yeah, I mean, listen, the Israel lobby spent a lot of money in that race to have Massey removed because he is one of very few Republicans to stand up on the Israel issue. And Blythe, you know, we're talking about Lebanon, but we got to talk about the Gaza situation of this all too. You know, on Thursday, I saw this from the Times of Israel that Netanyahu ordered the IDF to seize up to 70% of Gaza, which is, you know, I think they're around 60% of the territory they're controlled now, which is already beyond the 53% permitted under the October ceasefire. Again, the word ceasefire there is doing a whole lot of lifting, just as it is in Lebanon, just as it is in Iran. These ceasefires, there's still a lot of firing. Israel-backed militias are essentially functioning as shock troops in Gaza along the yellow line there. They're forcing Palestinian civilians out at gunpoint and are now being equipped with heavy military drones, likely supplied by the state. Defense Minister Katz confirmed the endgame, saying, quote, voluntary migration, which is a euphemism for ethnic cleansing. Let's call it what it is. You know, in that announcement, when Netanyahu announced they were going to take 70% of Gaza, at least one audience member was chanting they should take 100%. Netanyahu replied, well, first 70%, we'll start with that. So, you know, you see where this thing is going. And, you know, even the elected representatives in Gaza, which are still Hamas, they do have a political arm. They're complaining to Trump's so-called Board of Peace, hey, what are you doing here? This looks like ethnic cleansing. This looks like genocide to us. What do you think?
If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I mean, I feel like we just go in circles with this, right? Like, there is concrete evidence of what is happening. There are other organizations in other countries screaming at the rooftops what is happening. And we still are trying to convince people in America that there is a genocide happening. And this is really bad. And that money in politics is causing all of this. The Board of Peace is specifically put there to capitalize on destroying families in Asia, in countries and areas where white people think they need to be taking over. And I mean, this just boils. I mean, this is it. I mean, this is why everything is up in arms, and we just have to keep moving forward and keep screaming that this is a problem. We need to stop it.
It's downright Orwellian to call something the Board of Peace
Yeah.
where their mission is essentially to rebuild Gaza after cleansing it of the indigenous inhabitants of the country, and they're going to build beachfront hotels and resort properties on there. It is disgusting, and there are people on that board of peace who have money in Indiana politics, and it should be looked at. And I will just point folks to the Progressive Indiana Network website if they want to look more into that. Now, the Middle East isn't the only place there is a legit shooting war still going on. There were developments in Russia and Ukraine this week. We don't talk about this a lot. This one's sort of flown under the radar with, us being actively involved in Iran. But last Sunday, Russia hit Kyiv with a massive attack, including 600 drones and 90 missiles. Killing at least 2 people and damaging residential buildings and schools and areas near government offices. For only the 3rd time in this war, Russia deployed a hypersonic ballistic missile, a weapon capable of carrying nuclear warheads. Thankfully, this one was not. Now, Russia framed this as retaliation for a Ukrainian drone strike on a college dormitory in Russian-occupied Luhansk that killed 21 people. I don't know if that college dormitory was being used by college students or if it was being used by Russian troops. Now, Russia also warned foreign nationals to leave Kyiv after this large attack. And more notably, later this week on Friday, a Russian drone supposedly targeting Ukraine went astray and hit an apartment building in Romania. Now, Romania is a NATO member, so that is a big deal. And, NATO, they said they expressed, quote, absolute solidarity with Romania, but took no formal action. If they wanted to treat this as an act of war, that could be a major escalation, which would necessitate the United States becoming directly involved due to NATO Article 5. Putin's advisor, Dmitry Medvedev, didn't exactly apologize for this thing going astray and seemed to goad the Europeans, saying that, that the peaceful sleep is over. That is what his quote was. So, Blythe, this looks like this has potential to escalate. I think a drone had previously crossed into Polish airspace. This one actually hit a Romanian building, injuring people. I don't know. Is this an accident or are they testing the fences, as it were?
I find it hard to believe it would be an accident. I mean, we've been doing this for how many years now? They've been at war. I don't think it's an accident. And I think we also aren't talking about it enough.
Well, and to that effect, Chuck, I don't think the Trump administration has hinted frequently. I mean, they're not very subtle with their hints that they think NATO is obsolete, that the U.S. contributes too much to it. And I think that it is a possibility that Russia is trying to goad NATO into a war and get the U.S. to say, not our fight.
It would make sense from a perspective of the isolationists in this current administration that want to isolate the United States, where it's America first, where it's only us, we worry about us, we don't worry about anybody else. But again, it demonstrates a failure of understanding of the geopolitics. I mean, without NATO, a whole lot of stuff happens. And without getting too deep in the weeds, because it's just time. But Putin, I believe, I agree with Blythe. I don't believe it was an accident. I believe this was a action, because Putin is losing some internal support in Russia, and I think he's trying to find ways to spark involvement, I guess, maybe the easiest way to say it. So it's just, yeah, it's a nightmare scenario, because if he is testing NATO and NATO doesn't, or NATO needs to respond, and we don't upend it or uphold our side of it, which I have serious doubts would happen with this administration, it's a cataclysmic series of events afterwards.
Yeah,
Not
it
to be Debbie Downer.
essentially renders NATO done, finished.
Pretty much.
And that has been, one of the pillars holding up the international rules-based order for the last 80 years, which we know it's crumbling. We know a new world order is being rebuilt. We don't know what it's going to look like, but that would, I think, be the final nail in the coffin. And China, Trump was just there a couple weeks ago. They got to be sitting back and just enjoying all of this immensely. So I guess before we turn the page and look at sort of the economic fallout of this war and the rest of the economy, Blythe, I'll give you the final word here.
It's really hard for me not to spiral on these things because, this is a pattern. There's bombs here, explosions here, and then we get like our feet taken out from underneath us in America. It's like distract. Oh, we're going to do this. So it's hard for me to not feel like we're bracing for impact to what's going to happen here because we're paying attention to what's happening over there. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. The political fatigue that has been caused by Donald Trump and his supporters and his enablers is it's really wearing on people.
It is, and obviously the folks in Iran, the folks in Lebanon, the folks in Gaza, the folks in Ukraine are feeling these conflicts certainly much more tangibly, much more bodily than we are. But Americans are feeling pinched economically.
Well, we're starting it. I mean, a lot of this is our fault.
Yeah, 100%. And a certain small select group of folks will benefit from this while the most of us pay the price, literally in many cases. Now, obviously, the U.S. is burning through munitions in this Iran war, and it's going to take years to restore them. So, hey, we can still make things in this country, just bombs. So that's about what we're going to be up to for the next several years, replenishing our stocks there. Time is the major constraint there. It's not money. We have the money to build whatever kind of war making capabilities we want at all the times, it seems. But these things take months and even years to build. Now, right now, however, inflation is hitting Americans very hard, hitting 3.8% in April. That's the fastest pace in 3 years, obviously driven by the energy prices going up from the Iran war. Gasoline is up more than 50% since the start of the war. Diesel is up over $6 a gallon, pretty much most of the country. Real household income fell for the third straight month. Consumer spending is slowing. The personal savings rate is slowing. People's credit card balances are going way up. GDP growth was revised down to a meager 1.6% for the first quarter. Economists are expecting consumers to pull back even further as, tax refunds, whatever folks had, run out. Those cushions are gone. And, even if a deal was made tomorrow, that will not save the economy from energy market chaos this summer. I've got a great article link from Business Insider that says, even if a peace deal is reached tomorrow, oil markets won't normalize for at least 3 months, with shippers and insurers needing to regain confidence in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. is drawing on reserves, but not experiencing true shortages yet. But like in the rest of the world, they're already experiencing shortages. They're cutting back on flights. They're mandating that folks, only go into work in the office like every other day. And with all this going on, where are our business leaders? CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin says they're all afraid to say anything because they're scared that Trump will come after them and their companies through regulatory retaliation and blocked mergers and agency interference. Sorkin, who is promoting a book about the 1929 stock market crash, says, quote, "We will have a crash. I just can't tell you when, and I can't tell you how deep. Chuck, a lot going on. The economic fallout. Again, we were talking about this a little bit before we went live. Just a bunch of self-inflicted wounds.
Absolutely. And then to add on top of all of that mess, there's other domestic pressures that aren't even showing or being talked about as much. I mean, there's some in the utility space. They increased electrical costs because of our fascination with building data centers or other high energy intensive processes. But then there's another thing, and I can say this from the water world, that starting in 2027 through 2037, every water utility throughout the United States has to replace any lead service lines or anything that was downstream of a lead service line. And you're talking billions of dollars that are going to be needed for that. And every utility, and I can say this legitimately, every utility is saying, okay, where's that coming from? Because, I mean, and sadly, I mean, there's only but so many ways to squeeze the turnip. And so, if we can afford to build all the bombs, missiles, all the war things, it kind of makes me question, like, where the heck are our priorities? I mean, when do we focus on the real problems here at home and not worry about starting stupid conflicts that we shouldn't have ever been in the first place? So, yeah, I mean, the reality is hitting. There's actually a guy here in Hancock County that I've talked to, and he's feeling it really hard. Like he's literally living week to week, just trying to make sure he stays above water, and it's just getting harder and harder.
It is. It's you mentioned the having to replace all these lead service lines in our pipes. I think forget that those are still there. We eliminated lead paint in like the 1970s. I think our current crop of leaders ate a lot of that lead paint, necessitating that change, and that's kind of why we are where we are now. Blythe, we'll turn to the kind of the Indiana angle on this economic fallout in a minute, but like, what Sorkin says that a crash is imminent, and I tend to agree. The entire economy is built on a bubble, much to what Chuck said. It's this AI bubble. So much of the value of the stock market right now is just those, like the seven big companies. I call them the Maleficent Seven. That they just are passing this money around back and forth between themselves, inflating the value of their companies on paper. And if AI is as groundbreaking and changing and will affect the economy as much as they say it is, it's going to put a lot of people out of work. If it is a bunch of hype, then this bubble is going to burst. We're headed to a bad spot either way.
We are. The only silver lining I can say is that people are paying attention. I have never seen so many people willing to talk about this and to express concern in my adult life. And I just think this compounds that we need change. We have got to get political leaders who know what it feels like to experience being treated this. We are being abused by our politicians. We are being abused by the system, and it's got to stop. I don't know what that looks like, but it's got to stop.
And so let's talk about the Indiana of it all. Obviously, our state, our Hoosiers, you both mentioned it, are feeling the economic pain right now with the fuel prices and whatever. Our utility costs have gone up and up and up with the data centers, plus just consolidation, and our utilities own our legislators and and whatnot. And all it seems like our Republican leaders can do around here is nibble around the edges. Mike Braun pitching this week some property tax relief for older Hoosiers. He passed this massive property tax quote unquote reform bill in 2025, which really hit cities and towns and school districts to the effect of over $1.8 billion. Only granting the most modest of relief to homeowners, much of which has been swallowed up by the increasing cost of living. Obviously, for this upcoming session in 2027, Braun is pitching an idea to give some property tax deductions to disabled veterans and some folks over 65. And, again, very, very modest tweaks around the edges that is not even beginning to address the systemic issues we have in our economy. And one thing we could do to raise a whole boatload of money, obviously, is to legalize cannabis in this state. We're one of only 10 states that has no either medical or recreational marijuana. Now, we've seen some shifting on this. State Senator Mike Hogsett is drafting a medical marijuana bill. Governor Braun has signaled openness to this discussion, but Attorney General Todd Rokita this week joined with the AGs of Nebraska and Louisiana in a federal lawsuit to block the DEA's move to reclassify marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, calling the rulemaking, quote, arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion. They just don't get it. Blythe, I'm going to come right back to you here. Why can't Indiana have some weed? My God, we need it.
Because
in more than one way.
In more than one way, right? But we also need to be taxing the ultra rich and stop pandering to corporations. I mean, it is just a cycle. Like, it all goes back to greed. And it has been that this is the expectation of our current political climate, is to get as much power and money for yourself, everyone else be damned. And they have no clue what they are doing to communities and what they're doing. They're making Americans and Hoosiers unsafe, leaving our state and leaving our country just every day. It gets worse. We got to get rid of them. All of them.
And Chuck, you know, to the point about Braun, the tweaks they made this past session, right? The SEA one from 2025, that was the big property tax bill, and they tweaked it a little bit in this past section. They're trying to tweak it a little bit in this next session, it sounds like. They're not addressing the real systemic problems in this state, and it's that the wealthy folks and the big businesses here don't pay enough in taxes, and far too much of the burden is resting on the shoulders of regular Hoosiers.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a continued thing where if you want to start a business, come to Indiana. Great, we will let you do it. We will give you everything you need to do it. I don't know. I fail to put the idea together that if you have a multi-billion-dollar company, they want to land somewhere, they have the resources to invest. They don't need tax breaks. They don't need, accommodations from local governments. It's just this fallacy in the way we look at how we bring these things forward. The other thing I just kind of want to point out the hypocrisy of is in Todd Rokita leading a federal lawsuit against something that that Pope Palpatine actually put forward of saying, I want this to happen. Irony writes itself in this stuff. It's almost classic. I found that hilarious, actually.
Yeah. Again, we are led by the worst people. Put a pin in that. We're going to talk about one of them again here in a second. But let's talk about one of the best people. Weird that I find myself saying this about the Pope, of all folks, but I'm a big fan of the current guy. I like the last guy a lot. And, somebody who doesn't like the Pope is President Trump. Obviously, he's been going back and forth with the pontiff over the course of the year as, Leo, the first American Pope, actually preaches the words of Jesus and peace and loving each other. Well, the president is at it with him again over Iran, criticizing the Pope regarding Iran's nuclear program. He thinks the Pope wants a nuclear armed Iran. I don't think that is what the Pope is suggesting at all. Trump reshared a social media post from Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who attended a prayer with Pope Leo just this week. And in the comments, Trump suggested someone should inform the Pope that the Chicago mayor is, quote, useless and that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Again, just like, dude, pick a different fight. You're not going to win this one. The Pope, very popular, far beyond Catholics, even with my atheist self. big fan. Now, the Pope this week issued his first encyclical, which is a very big deal in Catholic circles. This is an official document from the church that states their policy on an issue. This is a 42,000 word document that the Pope put out this week called Magnifica Humanitas. This is the 135th anniversary of Rerum Novarum, which was composed by Pope Leo XIII, way back in the late 1800s. This encyclical frames AI as the defining social challenge of our time. Now, his core argument is this, that AI is not inherently evil, but, quote, technology is never neutral. It takes on the character of those who build, fund, and control it, and it must not be concentrated in the hands of a few. The Pope called for AI to be disarmed, stripped of military, economic, and cognitive dominance, and warned that there is no algorithm that can make war morally acceptable. The Pope also said that AI must not force workers to adapt to machines. Machines must serve workers, not the reverse. And technology-driven unemployment in the name of profit is unacceptable. Additionally, in this encyclical, the Pope made a historic apology for the Vatican's role in legitimizing slavery. This he framed it as inseparable from the encyclical's AI theme, saying the church must condemn digital age trafficking and exploitation now if we want to avoid the need to ask for pardon again in the future. You know what? Listen, if it wasn't for the hundreds of years of abuse, which I can't get over, I might consider converting. I don't know. Chuck, what do you think about the Pope?
Well, I have to say that I am thoroughly encouraged by his approaches on things. That he's taking issues head on. He's not sidestepping. And I'm not saying that previous popes have, but I'm just saying that he's in this position where he can say, "Look, we've got to make some different changes. The way we've been operating can't be how we move forward." And I think, again, coming from a non-Christian, that if you're going to take anything away from that idea right there, we can't keep doing what we've been doing. And Blythe hit this beautifully earlier. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. We as a species have to change and evolve. And that's what he is trying to set the stage, I think, for, is to say we can be better humans. We just have to get past some of these, I'll be nice and say shortcomings, and I'll just
And Blythe, an interesting framing, I think, by the Pope, comparing the church's complicity in the slave trade and the exploitation, obviously, involved in that, and apologizing for it and saying, listen, we can't repeat these mistakes now with AI, which could theoretically be a way to enslave people once again. I mean, what are we going to do if this thing does work the way some of our tech overlords want it to work, and it puts everybody out of business or out of work, out of a job, and then you have this mass underclass of exploited people who, are expendable and can be forced to work for slave wages.
Yeah. So, I mean, this just goes right back down to the roots of all of this, right? We have systems and organizations in place, not just church, not just politics, not just businesses, that historically have been so terrible for humanity. And capitalism was built on the backs of enslaved people. This country is the way it is because we stole this land and we used enslaved people who were also stolen to do so. And we continue to ignore it. And what I really appreciate about this, and I'll be honest, I have tunnel vision right now with the campaign. So a lot of this stuff, I'm like, oh, I've heard bits and pieces, but not in depth. So this is actually really encouraging because part of the systemic problem of where we are today is religion. And I like that the Pope can embrace his faith in the actual, literal teachings of Jesus and say, yeah, we have screwed up. We're going to own it. We're going to speak up on it. And I feel like that's a lot of us in Indiana. We've been trying to do the same thing, but on the political landscape, right? Democrats, we have a good party platform. We really do. Does it need to be better? I think so. But it is a good place to start. And it is the only viable option right now in the systems that we are in and the way that they are set up. So bravo to him. I think, I hope it continues to like build upon that and the things that do need to change within the church, and these having leaders like that speak up, it is helpful. And I think in the long run, we're going to see that this story, he's going to have a lot to do with getting us out of this mess, because people listen to religious leaders, and that's also how we got here.
Yeah, so you get refreshing and important for folks like the Pope to say, we've made mistakes, we need to do better, we take responsibility for these. Somebody who has never made a mistake in their life, at least according to themselves, is Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, who this week really stepped in it. So in a streaming show called Flashpoint on televangelist Kenneth Copeland's network. Copeland's a ghoul himself, by the way. Anyway, the lieutenant governor declared, quote, "I hate Islam. It's a demonic death cult." Adding that people need permission to hate again. Beckwith arguing some hatred is necessary because God hates certain things in the Bible, and claimed jihadists are working with Marxists to tear down society. Without elaborating, Beckwith just uses a lot of words that he heard and spews them out there. So CARE, the organization that the Council on American Islamic Relations, thank you, warned Beckwith is using his office to legitimize violence against Muslims, noting that these comments came, a little more than a week after a massive attack on a San Diego mosque, which killed 3 people. CARE recorded a record number of anti-Muslim bias complaints in 2025. Even Republicans in Indiana pushed back on Beckwith. Senator Spencer Deary saying rhetoric like this from Indiana's second highest official, quote, makes the first, meaning religious freedom, impossible. Deary finds himself in a contested Senate race this year and just barely survived a challenge from a MAGA Trump Republican. Beckwith's office declined to apologize. He framed this as a defense of, quote, one nation under God, and doubled down with an quote unquote apology, saying, "I hope you all," referring to Muslims, "become Christian," with a heart emoji. This guy, Blythe, what an ass. When does this guy not know when to shut up?
That is the nicest thing you could call him. He is horrific. I was in a town hall yesterday with a group of Republicans in Kokomo, and it was a hot topic. Like, how do we get recall elections? Like, how do we change our systems to prevent this from happening? It is so bad. These people are so bad. It is actually bringing our communities back together in real time. It truly is. And he is horrible. Micah Beckwith needs to go. I have nothing kind to say about that piece of garbage. I hate him. I don't say that lightly, but I do not like him.
Well, he gave you permission to hate him. So
yes,
okay.
You're right.
Yes.
You're exactly right. Which, how can you say that? We are already so divided because of politics like this. And the irony is, people like us are the ones who get blamed for it. Like, how can you not hate this? How can you not push back against it? How can you not say we need a complete overhaul in this system because of idiots, complete incompetent idiots like Micah Beckwith? And
apparently we're working with Marxists and jihadists to destroy America.
Come on. But, any Republican who doesn't like Beckwith, they are complicit in where we are. I do not care what anybody says. Micah Beckwith is a symptom of this organization and this nonsense that's happened in Indiana for decades. And it is because of the Republicans and complacent Democrats that we are here.
Chuck, it's ironic, right? This guy, he calls Islam a demonic death cult, and he warns about Sharia law like that religious law will be imposed on Americans from extreme fundamentalists of one faith. And the man is so dense that I don't think he realizes he's describing his very own Christian nationalist movement.
I don't know if he's dense that he doesn't understand it. I think it may be worse. In some cases, worse than that. I mean, at best case, he's unaware of it. Worst case, he's doing it intentionally. The it's like I've heard this said in many ways. Every accusation is a confession, and every time he opens his mouth, it's just it's dumbfounding. But to go back in, I saw a video this morning, and I said something. It was a Bible verse. Now, granted, I'm not with quoting the Bible that often, but I thought it was interesting. It said, "Those who love God but hate their neighbor are lying." I that's that's the best line I could put to it, because that's exactly it.
It's two sides of the same religious extremism coin. Like Micah Beckwith and these Christian nationalists' vision for America doesn't differ a whole heck of a lot than from the Iranian regime's vision for their country. It is the same thing dressed up with a different name. I don't know, Blythe, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And it is not a comfortable thing to say or to agree with or admit, but I mean, the sooner more people really sooner people resonate with that, the better off we all are going to be.
Religious extremism of any stripe is wrong. I don't know how else to say it.
Extremism in any vein is wrong. I mean, no matter what purview you're in, you go to the extreme in any belief structure or anything you do, it's going to lead to trouble.
100%. And well, let's talk about some extremists who have been running our immigration facilities here in this country. And, we need to talk about this major developments this week. Let me flip that over. All right. So obviously, the far right white nationalists who are running our immigration and customs agencies in this country are running concentration camps. Let's call it what they are. And one of them in New Jersey has become the scene of conflicts this week. Delaney Hall in Newark has been the site of a hunger strike with between 300 and 400 detainees participating in this strike. They're reporting inhumane conditions, worms and maggots in their food, poor air circulation. They're not receiving medical care. They're not being able to talk to their attorneys. And, as such, they're engaging in this hunger strike. And protesters in support of these detainees have gathered outside Delaney Hall over the course of the week. Now, ICE agents there responded with aggressive tactics, including using pepper spray on the protesters. One of those sprayed was U.S. Senator Andy Kim. That was outside of Delaney Hall on Monday, on Memorial Day. Kim had physically positioned himself between protesters and agents, described detainees telling him about a pregnant woman who was denied OBGYN care, another woman who miscarried with no medical support, and an 18-year-old high school senior separated from her mother. DHS, for their part, called this all a political stunt and denied any hunger strike or poor conditions were even taking place, and blamed Kim for getting pepper sprayed, while ICE described the senator and the protesters as, quote, rioters. We should note, members of Congress have explicit legal authority to conduct oversight visits of detention facilities. Kim said he had to personally call DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin just to get inside. Now, this is going on over the course of the week. Things have even escalated. Last night, New Jersey state troopers were sent in by Governor Mikey Sherrill, who found a rare common ground with Mark Wayne Mullen in deploying state troopers to crack down on protest there. DHS celebrating this crackdown on social media with an all caps, "We won't back down." We should note, Delaney Hall is run by Geo Group, one of the largest private prison companies in the country. On a 15-year ICE contract, their detainees performed cooking, cleaning, and laundry work, paid as little as $1 an hour. In addition to the inhumane conditions, Elizabeth Warren was questioning the former CEO of Geo Group, who is the now current acting ICE director. No possible conflict of interest there. This Delaney Hall isn't even the only ICE facility found in severe violation of human rights standards. A lawsuit by the ACLU in Texas against Camp East Montana, the largest immigration detention facility in the country, was filed this week. And only 20% of the people in that facility have any criminal background. It's going to be similar in Delaney Hall as well. It's an abomination. Chuck, go off.
I don't even know where to even start with it. I mean, when you start treating people as less than human, it just invites so many different problems. I mean, herding these people into these concentration camps, detention centers, whatever you want to call them, and then something happens. Like these state troopers, I believe, they were blocking accesses, the main road access for reporters or anybody to even get close to see what was going when some things were happening. I mean, when did it become okay for us to discard anyone just based this on maybe where they came from? I mean, it's just not what we're meant to be. And I mean, I grant you, if you go back to the Constitution, which I know a lot of these Republicans love to beat people over the head with, and go back and read the damn thing, they would figure out that they are running so amok of it so far, it is unbelievable. So I mean, we need to crack down on it. We need to get serious people in charge. Get some of these, get these knuckleheads out of the system that have been appointed, that have these conflicts, that don't know what they're doing. They have no expertise in the areas that they've been put in charge of. If we don't do that, it's going to get worse. And I'm fearful that it's going to get to a certain point that it's just not going to be very recoverable.
Blythe, Chuck mentioned, he said, I don't know when, it became okay for people to be disposed of like this. Well, it's when it became profitable, right?
Well, and we talk thousands of years ago.
Well, we talked about this in conjunction with the Pope's statements on the church's complicity in slavery and the AI. People being expendable now. It is really just part of the pattern. But this private prison issue, it makes it very much explicit. Like, who the bad guys are here.
We do, and I think it's worth noting. Senator Kim is a veteran, and you need to really be paying attention to the people who've been part of these systems that got us here. Sadly, many of us in the military are a small part of how we got here, and many of us are trying to fix that in some capacity. So bravo to Senator Kim for standing up and speaking out. But this is, it's horrific, and it's not unique to New Jersey. And it's not even really, stealing our immigrants, regardless of citizenship status, is not okay. It's never been okay. But we have been doing this to people in prisons for a long time, a very long time, predominantly people of color. The BIPOC community has been attacked since America was America. So this is really mostly, to me, shining a light on a bigger issue. And we need to also remember that there are people that have been in these systems long before Donald Trump came along that are part of this systemic issue. And it's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. This is certainly a bipartisan effort over many years. And if you look at former President Joe Biden when he was in the Senate, he was a big part of that 1994 crime bill. He wrote that. This is not just a Republican issue. Obviously, they've turned it up to 11 during the Trump administration, and are continuing to do so. It's not just the overt rounding people up and putting them in these detention centers. They're also using, regulatory and administrative mechanisms to make life more difficult for people as well. The administration this week sued 4 states for denying ICE agents undercover license plates. That was Maine, Massachusetts, Oregon, and Washington. Some states are trying to push back in whatever way they can. Also, cities are trying to protect their immigrant communities through, things that the administration derisively calls sanctuary laws. Sanctuary cities, including Newark, Boston, Chicago, LA, New York, Seattle, and San Francisco, are in Trump's crosshairs. The administration is drawing up plans to stop international flights from coming into those cities' airports. The timing on that, not great. We're expected to see tens of millions of tourists from across the globe pour into the United States next month for the FIFA World Cup, including games at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, one of the targeted cities. The U.S. Travel Association warning the move would have devastating consequences for the travel industry and the communities dependent on international visitors. I think that's sort of their point. Now, additionally, the administration squeezing people who are already here legally. A new memo from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services quietly reframes green card applications filed inside the U.S. as, quote, extraordinary discretionary relief, which effectively forces hundreds of thousands of legal applicants to leave the country and apply from their country of origin. This would leave the multi-year reentry bars for many applicants, meaning complying with the new policy could permanently destroy their cases and separate them from their family members. Some applicants have no processing options at all, including abuse survivors on the special immigrant juvenile status. Others are nationals of 75 countries where the State Department has indefinitely paused immigrant visa processing altogether. I know people who this affects, people who have been in the country for decades legally, and they're trying to get them to leave and make it impossible for them to come back in. This is administrative ethnic cleansing, is it not, Blythe?
It is. It absolutely is. But again, they're picking and choosing who they want to pick on, because we know we have people in our government who get special privileges or who don't have to be treated this way. And we're not paying attention. This is not to say I'm trying to diminish this. It is horrific for the individuals. It is horrific for the families. I'm arguing as a soldier with PTSD, it is also horrific for the people who are running these operations, even though they're doing it and being paid for it. But we're not even seeing the larger impact to our local economies, to our local communities, to our local governments, to our environment. What are we really doing here? Just taking an extra hundreds of people and just shipping them out. What are we doing? Why are we spending money and fuel and energy on that? Why?
Yeah, even if you want to be completely cynical about it and just look at it from a cost standpoint, this is a massive waste of money. It's a drain on the economy. Yep. Chuck, final word on this immigration horror show that our country is running currently.
Yeah, I agree with Blythe. I mean, it's these folks that have been here and they come in and they are part of our societies. They are part of our communities. They provide value to our everyday existence. And the more and more we concentrate on excluding or demonizing, deporting, and all these other things, we're literally, like we said earlier, shooting ourselves in the foot because we're creating more economic strife. The other side too, and again, I will apply that something I was thinking about. The folks that are having to go through all this, my heart goes to the ones that don't want to be there but have no other choice, because the trauma that they're going to have to deal with later is going to be unbelievable. I mean, I deal with things I went through. Blythe, I know you've had, we've talked about it
Yep.
multiple times, and people just they minimize those things because they don't think, oh well, we don't have to worry about it later on down the road. We'll just do this now. We'll don't have to worry about it. And I'm saying it will bite us all in the tail end.
It will. It's yeah, it's a human disaster. It's an economic disaster. It is if Donald Trump and his people were trying to destroy this country, I think they'd go about it exactly this way. Like you hear it talked about if Donald Trump was a Russian agent, would he be doing anything differently than what he is now? And I don't think he would. Let us take 45 seconds to hear from my friends down at Crossroad Commons in Salem, and we will come back on the other side and talk about Trump's weaponization, the slush fund, real weaponization and fake weaponization. I will see you folks here in about 45 seconds.
The Crossroads Commons in Salem, Indiana, headquartered in a historic Salem home, is holding a fundraiser to expand via the purchase of the 3/4-acre lot of land adjacent to their facility. Please consider donating or spread the word so that they can further expand their services to the community. Scan the QR code on your screen for a direct link to the donation page and help us buy the grass.
Our friend Renee is doing great stuff down there in Washington County. They could really use your help. Please help out however you can. Now, let us talk about this weaponization, as I mentioned. And, there's real weaponization going on, and it's at the hands of this administration. This week, the DOJ is seeking the names of social media users critical of ICE. The folks we were just talking about. Hope you guys enjoy being on watch lists, because we're probably all on one now. The Trump DOJ via U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro subpoenaed Reddit and X for the names, addresses, and bank information of users who posted criticism of ICE. Part of a criminal investigation, though neither of the two users who we know about were told what crime they're suspected of. I suspect there are certainly more folks who are under investigation that we don't yet know about. The administration is also using arrests, prosecutions, and investigations of many folks. I am linking in the show notes to a document from a group called Protect Democracy, who has detailed the 22 cases, at least, of retaliatory DOJ investigations, arrests, and prosecutions, including folks such as James Comey, John Bolton, Adam Schiff, Letitia James, Jerome Powell, Senator Mark Kelly, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and many more. And add to that list this week E. Jean Carroll, the woman who accused President Trump of assaulting her in the late 80s or early 90s. It's been many decades at this point, and she won $88 million in judgments against Trump for both sexual abuse and then the defamation that he continued to do after losing the first case. This investigation focuses on a 2022 deposition statement that she received no outside funding for her lawsuit before it emerged that billionaire Reid Hoffman had covered some legal fees. Now, apparently, because Hoffman has a nonprofit outside of Chicago, the federal Prosecutors referred the case there to the Northern District of Illinois. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche had to recuse himself because he was one of Trump's personal attorneys on the Carroll appeals. Now, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District said his office had never opened such an investigation. Sources then reaffirmed it to CNN anyway, suggesting either the DOJ is internally confused or deliberately deceitful here. This inquiry, like I said, it involves E. Jean Carroll. Again, the man has put this woman through so much again and again and again, but the real target here appears to be Hoffman's nonprofit, American Future Republic. Now, again, Trump administration attacks their enemies all over the place. We listed all of them. We're adding Carroll to that list. We're adding a judge who ruled this week against him on the Kennedy Center. The federal judge blocking this Kennedy Center's renaming and renovation plans, noting that only Congress, not Trump's handpicked board, can change the name of the Kennedy Center. Trump responded with a 700-word Truth Social screed demanding the judge be impeached, accusing him of ruling against Trump because his, quote, wife probably told him to do so. More than a dozen major acts have already canceled Kennedy Center performances since the renaming. Artists are also bailing on the USA 250th anniversary special that Trump is now supposed to be headlining. Listen, it's a disaster. We will talk about this Trump weaponization slush fund here shortly, where they claim that they were persecuted, actual criminals who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, that they were somehow persecuted by the federal government. But here you see what actual government weaponization looks like, right, Chuck?
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny part about not funny, but the again, one of these points of they just do things and don't think about it. This point had come up. Judge looked at it and said this was not a problem as far as the outside funding part of it goes, because she didn't know about it. It wasn't an active thing. The judge tossed that out, and they couldn't use that during this determination process. So it's really a nothing burger. It's just literally trying to drag her again through the coals. Again, he and I think this is, I don't know if this is a product of his mental degradation, which I think it is part, that he just cannot move on from this one fixation. But let's face it, he was found liable for assaulting her. There's nothing in the world that's going to change that fact, period, whatever he says. And trying to turn the DOJ into an attack dog that he sticks after all of his political enemies it's sickening. It is absolutely sickening. And it is, and then back to the slush fund thing. I'm surprised I have the top of my head, because I think it wanted to blow off when I heard about that. And I'm sorry, as a veteran, January 6th still sits in my mind as a very triggering event, because it was the epitome of what we trained to defend us from, and yet we did it to ourselves. And I can only imagine the parallel between the beginning impacts of the Civil War when those events kicked off, and a lot of people probably having similar thought processes of, we're shredding ourselves apart. And to think that these criminals, that most of them were found guilty or pled guilty or whatever, they weren't unfairly prosecuted. They were prosecuted exactly the way it should have been. And in fact, I think it was actually they got off rather easily on 99% of that. They should have had the book. Hell, they should have had the whole damn library thrown at them instead of just the book.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a little bit more here in a second. We're very much repeating history. It seems like big part of the reason we are where we are now is because the folks who started the Civil War weren't sufficiently prosecuted. We let a lot of those guys off the hook and back into government eventually, and here we are now doing the same thing on a smaller scale, at least with January 6th thing. But Blythe, I can't get over this this investigation into E. Jean Carroll now, it's like the Trump and his people are just re-assaulting her again and again and again.
Yeah. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it a million times, and this is political abuse. Our tax dollars are paying to abuse us. And you're right, it goes back to the Civil War. The people who were enslaving and capitalizing from enslaved people never had any consequences. And January 6th, well, I mean, I very much remember where I was when I learned about what was happening, much like 9/11, only some of these people were veterans. Some of these people were our neighbors. And what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? I just, it's mind-boggling to simultaneously feel so optimistic because we have so many people plugged in and willing to fight this fight. But then we have these conversations and it's like, how do we get beyond how I can't even wrap my mind around how we fix this and keep us safe from those people.
Yeah, and listen, those people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, many of them are clamoring for payouts from Trump's new quote anti-weaponization slush fund, right? We talked about this last week. We talked about it a little bit about the week before when it sort of first got floated out there. Trump created this $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund. 1776. They think they're being cute. Nearly 1,600 people were charged with the Capitol riot-related crimes. Over 1,200 of them were convicted before juries of their peers, before Trump issued mass pardons, including members of far-right extremist groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, who violently plotted to keep Trump in power. Attorney General or Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche refused to rule out payments to violent J6 defendants, punting all decisions to 5 commissioners, none of who have been named yet, but who will be appointed, at least if this thing goes through, by Trump and Blanche. One pardoned attorney who stormed the Capitol on January 6th is already charging fellow rioters a 10% cut to file claims on their behalf. Again, even though no application process exists yet, this guy, I think, learned his grift from watching the master in action. Now, a federal judge paused the administration's anti-weaponization fund this week, freezing any payments until at least a June 12th hearing, ruling urgently because she feared cash could start flowing even before the legal challenge played out. Even Senate Republicans are upset about this. Ted Cruz, of all people, said his colleagues were yelling at Blanche in a closed-door meeting, calling the fund foolish and politically toxic ahead of the midterms. It seems to me they're more concerned about the optics than the actual crime taking place here. And a different judge reopened Trump's IRS lawsuit to examine the origins of this settlement with the Justice Department. The core allegation is that Trump used his own lawsuit against his own government to obtain unlawful private benefits, including, and this one doesn't get talked about enough in the slush fund, the side deal permanently shielding him and his family from any IRS audits presently or into the future. It's, again, I said Orwellian earlier, Blythe, and it's what they're doing with this the term weaponization is Orwellian. The people who are standing up for the rule of law are being attacked. The people who attack the rule of law are being rewarded. Make it make sense.
We can't. It is blatant corruption, and they do not give in. They don't give a fuck about the fallout. They don't, because they have stacked everything in their favor, and it is so surreal. Like, I almost every day I wonder how this is real life, because it really is like something, one of those novels you read in grad school. And the attorneys who continue to capitalize on this stuff. That's also terrible because they took an oath to the law. It's so unethical. It's so unethical.
I think when all is said and done, Chuck, to Blythe's point, there are folks who have obligations that they are foregoing in pursuing some of these things, and a lot of folks need to be held accountable. Obviously, Trump and his administration and his cronies, but also a lot of lower level functionaries like the attorneys who are violating their oath, like these like ICE agents who are breaking the law in pursuit of their illegal goals. What does some sort of justice look like in the aftermath of a Trump administration? Because what's going to happen when these people are held to account. They're going to claim weaponization.
That thought's been kind of interesting to kind of go through. I mean, how do we learn from this experience, and how do we improve ourselves for the future? Just passing a few laws here and there, I don't think it's actually going to make the long-term impact. I mean, it's going to have to be so, grassroots, fundamental change from the bottom up type of idea, because if anything, this corruption that we, and I say this generally as the United States, because we as a collective whole have allowed it to occur. We have to seriously take a step back and say, is this what we want to be from now on? Because, I mean, we've destroyed ourselves internally. I mean, heck, I'll just flat out say it. We've done more to ourselves than any external terrorists would ever have hoped to have done.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we rebuild better than where we are? And can we create systems where another tangerine mess doesn't re-evolve itself in the future? I mean, we've got to get to the base point of it and restart and build accountability. And these people, I mean, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We have to hold the accountability. It's just like in local offices. People have to be held to account. Sorry, I'm going to plug a little bit for Blythe on this one, but Secretary of State Morales should be held to account for all the stuff that he has done wrong and still is doing wrong, even at this direct point in time. It's the exact same thing. We have to have the intestinal fortitude to go forward and say, this cannot happen again, period. Sorry, that was a little bit
Absolutely.
long.
Yeah, we talked about this in relation to the Civil War earlier. I think about after apartheid in South Africa and how they had this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, right? And it seems in our country we want the reconciliation without any of the truth. We just want to skip to the everybody gets along part, and if you don't hold the criminals accountable, it's going to fester, and it's going to come back and bite you again down the road. And here we are.
Yeah.
Let's turn the corner a little bit and talk about some tech stories. But there's a thread straight through on the government weaponization front to this, because there was a story in Wired this week detailing how the DHS, the FBI, and 80 fusion centers are now surveilling a new domestic threat category: anti-tech violent extremism, a term that doesn't exist in any public DHS or FBI threat guides, and is broad enough to sweep peaceful data center protesters and AI skeptics into their dragnet, right? So we've talked about in the space before Trump's National Security Presidential Memo 7, which instructs the DOJ to target anyone holding, quote, anti-American, anti-Christian, and anti-capitalism beliefs. Well, we can add anti-tech beliefs to that now. Ken Klippenstein over on Substack elaborates even more. Congress now has its own intelligence agency called the Capitol Police Intelligence Services Bureau, which was created after January 6th, and it is producing threat reports about data center critics and distributing them to these, quote, fusion centers. The trigger through line here, right to Indianapolis. The trigger for this report appears to be the alleged shooting at the home of Indianapolis City Councilman Ron Gibson, who supported a local data center project, which, a real incident. His door was really shot up, but there's been no arrest or any confirmed motive for this. A Gallup poll this month found 7 in 10 Americans oppose local data center construction, making anti-tech extremism a surveillance category that potentially covers the majority of the U.S. public. Chuck, we see a lot of this here. That we talk about this here, it seems like every week. There's another data center going up in another Indiana community. The people don't want it there. They come out, they voice their, they protest, they voice their displeasure in these community forums. According to the Trump administration, apparently all these people are violent extremists now.
Well, then I'm really up a creek then, apparently. I had this conversation last night, and it's funny to me. It's like we have this tech, the data center explosion, for lack of better terminology, reminds me of like the .com thing that happened years ago, and it's going to go the same bloody way, and it's going to, and again, cycles. We're repeating the same thing over and over and over again. We didn't learn the first time. We didn't learn during COVID. We're not learning, and unfortunately, these things, once they're built, are so. There is no upside to these things. As far as, okay, yeah, everybody uses data, everybody uses data centers. Yeah, okay, I get that. But the way they're being built, because they're resource intensive, they're destructive, and then they're there for a relatively short amount of time as an infrastructure build, because you're talking, maybe 10 years, if that, then what? Then you're left with this huge freaking facilities, there was one, I think, for like 600 acres or some jazz. Okay, well, you can't revert that land at that point. So then what? That again, we don't stop and ask the question. It's always, hey, we can do this. Nobody asks, should we do it in the way that we're doing it? And what is it costing us in the long term?
Oh, well, then you have a giant warehouse facility that can be used to detain all the violent anti-tech protesters, Chuck. It works out perfectly for these fascists. Blythe, let's look at the Indiana angle of this at all, right? So this week, and this is from WTHR, clergy from the Martindale-Brightwood area, again, a historically black neighborhood on Indianapolis's near northeast side, are demanding that Mayor Hogsett stop the Metro Blocks data center project. Their concerns are, the rising utility costs, obviously, and the sheer size of this structure in their neighborhood, plus the public incentive dollars going to a project the community did not want. Hogsett has repeatedly refused to meet with the clergy, passing them off to lower-level city staff. Are these folks going to wind up on Trump's terrorist watch list now as well? And also, maybe a large multinational corporation will also wind up on the terrorist watch list, because a Delaware jury ordered Columbus, Indiana-based Cummins to pay $23 million to a California AI firm after finding that Cummins secretly hired a different team in India to replicate that company's proprietary fuel efficiency AI application. Cummins was caught when a staffer was accidentally copied on an internal email revealing the plan, and when confronted was forced to admit it. I don't know, where does this thing stop? Blythe, and anybody who has any run-in with any AI company is going to wind up on their watch list now?
Well, this, I think, shines a light on a bigger issue, and it does go back. It kind of goes back to the Civil War thing, right? Like, these are systems that have been intentionally put in place brick by brick. When people sound the alarm, historically, they've been able to be suppressed because sharing information historically was very hard. I think while this is terrible, it will get worse before it gets better. But I continue to be very encouraged and delightfully surprised at how many people in the state of Indiana and beyond are pushing back, because, we talked about the Pope pushing back on immigration. Well, now we have clergy pushing back on our environmental and community infrastructure being attacked. So people are standing up and doing the right thing. It's slow. It is hard. It is terrifying. And I say that from experience. Not even having this conversation in the public puts us in danger. I've had threats. I'm sure all of you have had threats in some capacity for having these opinions. But this is a movement, and Hoosiers are meeting the moment. Our communities are meeting the moment. Our religious leaders are meeting the moment, regardless of political affiliation of people who are siding with them. This pushback literally defines what a grassroots movement is, and we have the numbers. It's not going to happen quickly. And the thing that we need to make sure we are talking about going forward and remembering is we have to keep this momentum going in some capacity. Like, the next 3 years are going to be horrible. We need to remember to rest. We need to not give up. But after that, we need to make sure we're telling one another and our youth and anyone who comes along in any capacity, this has to continue in some way. We have to still listen to our town, city, county council meetings. We need to pay attention to what's happening in our legislature and not brush it under the rug because we think, okay, we're getting out of this, it's better. And I'm saying like 10 years from now, right? How do we go forward? And this is maybe being too philosophical for this, but this really does all go back to the same thing: toxic capitalism. How do we go forward to make sure that our children are not doing this in 50, 60 years, or that our grandchildren, or if we choose not to have children, anyone who's younger than us, right? I'm
glad you,
encouraged. I'm encouraged, even though it is so sad to feel like I need to be part of fixing the problems that I was just a result of.
And if I could add one thing at the end of that, Blythe, you hit something really critical in the grassroots part of it. Putting people in the right spaces, in every space that is possible, from townships to city boards to county boards to local legislature. And to be honest, the townships, county boards, and the local governments and cities, that's where this is where this is really coming together. And if we continue that energy forward, we can start the ball rolling and we can get the change made. So sorry, I needed to add that in there because I felt that was a really great point.
But Chuck, we have.
No, absolutely.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I tell people, anyone listening to this, if you know someone who's a precinct committee person or a municipal candidate or a local party leader like Chuck, send them to this, because let me tell you, the entire state of Indiana is doing just that. Up and down the state, up and down the ballot, we have got municipal people stepping up and running for local offices to prevent this. And most of us are doing it with a little bit of money. Most of us are doing it with a lot of resistance and just building the plane as we fly it. But it is happening. And it sometimes sounds delusional to say this, but that people ask me all the time, what's your favorite part of the campaign? This is my favorite part, because it felt like a crazy idea doing this a year ago. And even before then, Scott, we've been trying to sound these alarms. It's happening. We have new leadership and new candidates all over the state of Indiana pushing back against this. This is happening in real time. So find your local people and just tell someone about it. Donate if you can, but by God, send it to people in your community, because this is changing. We are seeing it happen in front of our eyes. So everyone should be very proud to be any part of this.
And it's got to be grassroots. And I'm
Yes.
going to take this and highlight a couple local stories here. I'm glad you said the toxic capitalism, because number one, we're gonna point out a couple issues where capitalism is literally toxic, but also the people who are funded by these toxic capitalists are not actually going to fight for you. It's got to be grassroots. Now, listen, I want to point out a couple stories here. The Indy Star had this one. We know Indiana is very much in the ground zero for this data center gold rush, right? Well, fueling it has largely been fossil fuels to this point. NIPSCO up in northern Indiana is building 2 new natural gas plants totaling 2,600 megawatts and just cut a deal to purchase power from a coal plant in Sullivan County. The utility plans for these data centers are often buried deep in regulatory filings or kept in NDAs, so you don't know about them at all. And then there's the water aspect of this thing. You know, the city of Indianapolis, may delay Eagle Creek reservoir negotiations to study the impact of the LEAP district. We know that Citizens Energy Group plans to transport up to 25 million gallons of water a day to Lebanon's LEAP district and treat wastewater from LEAP and discharge that back into the reservoir, with the current contract containing no limits on the pollutant levels from that discharge. And now, here's the problem. The city hired a hydrologist with ties to the LEAP district to do the study. The Board of Public Works approving a $108,000 contract on a narrow 4-3 vote over conflict of interest objections from residents and board members. Now, the Department of Public Works says it's hard to find a water expert in Indiana who hasn't worked with either Citizens Energy or the LEAP district, which is either a reasonable explanation or a damning indictment of how incestuous Indiana's water policy world is, depending on your perspective. Chuck, this is your world. What do you think about this? This seems, you know, the conflict of interest is obvious.
Yeah, I kind of have a hard time with the statement of that you can't find a hydrologist that hasn't worked with citizens or in the LEAP project. I know for a fact there are folks that are out there that don't have those associations, and I'm not going to necessarily cast any stones because I don't know the realities of it. But I will say that this project, again, was one of those situations where we can do this, but should we? There was really no real thought into the complete impact of what this thing is. You know, the water usage is one thing, but all the infrastructure build out of getting the pipe from point A to point B, the changing in the water distribution from one water table to or one watershed to the next watershed. You know, I could go on for hours, and I'm not going to bore everybody, but just suffice to say that there are decisions to be made, and yes, it can be made properly, but if they do discharge back to Eagle Creek, they will still have to comply with NPDES standards, but they do need to do an in-depth dive into what will that runoff be like, how do they treat it, and how do they get it done successfully so where it does not upend the ecological balance of the reservoir or any other receiving stream that might be receiving discharge.
And then one last thing I didn't mention in this section is, you know, it's sort of tech related, and I want to go back to the national level on this. You know, some of the folks who are responsible for these big data centers include the Oracle, major company owned by Larry Ellison. Well, his nepo baby son, David Ellison, is now the owner at CBS, and they're also in the process of purchasing CNN and Warner Brothers and making this massive conglomerate. 60 Minutes, you know, one of the preeminent news magazines, you know, outlets for real tough journalism in this country, being gutted by the new editor-in-chief there, Bari Weiss, who ousted 60 Minutes' 2 senior executive producers and 2 veteran correspondents, replacing them this week with a former New York Times tech columnist with no TV production experience as only the 5th leader in the show's nearly 60-season history. This shakeup follows Paramount's $16 million settlement with the Trump administration to end a lawsuit over a Kamala Harris interview, which was lightly edited in 2024. And then we've seen they heavily edited a Trump interview just this year. Bari Weiss previously held a completed segment on the show about migrants sent to the CCOP concentration camp in El Salvador. The journalist who put that story together was one of those let go in this most recent reorganization. Blythe, this is very concerning. You know, I think we're all of a certain age where we knew 60 Minutes was like real hard hitting journalism. When you heard that ticking clock, you knew you were going to see some truth be told, and now that brand is being utterly gutted and turned to a Trump friendly outlet. Again, I've used the word multiple times today. Orwellian.
It is, and that's why we're here, right? That's why we now have independent media sources that are really becoming the voice of reason. Part of me is, I'm very glad that journalists continue to push back in those arenas. And it is blatant. People do see it. So I think it's going to not end well for them in the long run. And I think that's essential for a lot of those corporations. I just hope this creates systemic change in the long run. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how we get out of that. But somehow we have to, because I used to really enjoy shows like that, and now we can't trust it.
We can only hope that a new crop of elected officials will help, lead us through this. Obviously, there's the grassroots, which we're going to have to keep organizing ourselves, but we're also going to need to elect better people to help us through this process. And we did have one election take place this week. A big story out of Texas, obviously, where Trump got him another scalp. Where Texas Republicans in a runoff this week selected Ken Paxton as their nominee for U.S. Senator, defeating incumbent John Cornyn in a runoff race quite handily. Again, this is Trump has now picked off multiple sitting U.S. senators. We saw here in Indiana where he picked off a handful of state senators here because they dared defy him on one minor thing. All it took from Cornyn to fall out of Trump's good graces was casting doubt on Trump's electability after his first term. This is in 2023, and then Cornyn also voted for a bipartisan gun safety bill after the Uvalde massacre down there in his home state of Texas. Paxton, a real creep. He's been indicted for felony securities fraud, impeached by his own party down there in Texas for corruption. He is not well liked even by many Republicans down in Texas. As such, Cook Political Report immediately shifted Texas's senatorial race from likely Republican to lean Republican, with James Talarico having a real chance to flip that seat in November for the first time Texas would have a Democratic Republic or a Democratic senator in decades. Should he win, we should also note on the Democratic side, though, another incumbent was unseated. You recall Texas redrew their already gerrymandered maps, and as such, drew two incumbent representatives together. One of them was Al Green. Big fan of Al Green here, and he lost 70-30 to Christian Menifee, another incumbent, but who was appointed and has only been there for a few months. Green was heavily outspent, with crypto firms and AIPAC lining up behind Menifee in the Democratic runoff there. We are sad to see Al Green go. Blythe, your thoughts on Texas there? I don't know which direction you want to go. Maybe I will ask you to take on the Democratic side of that race, where you see big money lining up behind a compliant kind of Democrat versus the real fighter in Al Green. Now, obviously, we complain about the gerontocracy in this space a lot. Al Green is an older gentleman, but he's been one of the real fighters pushing back against the Trump administration. Menifee, younger guy, but I don't know, seems compromised by some of his donors here.
Yeah, that's alarming. It's always alarming when that happens. I hope they hold him accountable. That is not really the trend that's been going on in the country. But yeah, it's sad. I like Al Green a lot, but onward, right? We just got to keep pushing.
Yeah, and Chuck, on the Republican side of this thing, Ken Paxton, absolute ghoul. Like the securities fraud, impeached by his own party for corruption, negotiated a sweetheart deal to like get a convicted pedophile only 1 day in jail. He's screwing anything that moves. His wife sued for divorce on, quote, biblical grounds because of his infidelities. Is all that in Texas enough for Democrat Talarico to win in November?
I would hope to God so. And I use that phrasing very specifically. I mean, Talarico should be able to wipe the floor with Paxton because he is, in my mind, he's kind of like Pumpkin Spice Palpatine's 2.0. I mean, he has pulled a lot of the same stunts, he's followed a lot of the same playbook, and I mean, he's a creep. I mean, Paxton is just a nightmare. And I think people in Texas are a lot smarter than that. They've seen what trouble he's been and where that's at. And I've got to put my faith because I have I have family and close friends in Texas. I got to believe that they'll say, yeah, no, we're not going with this insanity.
By all accounts, Talarico is just like a Boy Scout, like very like clean cut. The dude went to seminary. He speaks widely of his faith. Very much two conflicting versions of Christianity that I think we'll see in that race. I mean, again, Paxton is going to talk the Christian nationalist game, even though, you know, his wife divorced him on biblical grounds. Whereas, you know, Talarico, like, speaks the Beatitudes and, you know, talks about Matthew 25 and caring for the least of these. And the attacks we've seen from the right on Talarico already in the last week since this race has been set have been really, really gross.
Oh yeah, and he's just got a T-shirt coming out with one of these things he's been labeled with the nickname Talafrico. I'm sorry, he's totally taking that and running with it, and I'm like, that is bloody brilliant. Just take it and go with it. So, I mean, it is funny, is, you know, I've said this to several people that he is the person that, from everything I've seen, lives his faith honestly, and I can applaud him for that. I mean, if you believe in the principles and you live them the proper way, go forth and conquer. And yes, it is a stark difference from the insanity of what these other people are pushing out there as in the Christian nationalist movement.
Yeah, more Talarico and Pope Leo, less Ken Paxton and Micah Beckwith.
Absolutely.
So we've also got to talk about, you know, there's still some electoral stuff going on here in Indiana. You know, we're past the primaries and the generals are largely set, but the parties do still both have conventions coming up where they're going to be choosing certain statewide candidates. On the Republican side, Diego Morales is lashing out this week after having lost the support of high-profile members of his own party. Senator Jim Banks and Attorney General Todd Rokita pulled their endorsements from Morales. State Treasurer Daniel Elliott called for his resignation. One of his campaign spokespeople quit. Max Engling, a Banks Senate staffer, is now widely viewed to be the favorite to secure that nomination. Morales is staying in this thing, though. He wants to go get fully embarrassed at their convention in Fort Wayne a little less than 3 weeks from today. Ironically, Morales is blaming his troubles on having supported Trump's redistricting push here in Indiana, conveniently ignoring, of course, that Banks and Rokita were also among the supporters of that same push. He blames Treasurer Elliott, who is a close ally of Senate President Pro Tem Rod Bray. Now, on the Democratic side this week, we finally got nominees for the office of comptroller and treasurer. Nobody had signed up for the sacrificial lamb role on the Democratic side yet, but this week Porter County Clerk Jessica Bailey was announced as a candidate for comptroller and Noblesville consultant Kumba Kebe for treasurer. good that we will have people on the ballot on the Democratic side, at least in those races. It had been hard to recruit candidates for certainly an uphill climb. Obviously, Blythe, the Secretary of State's race, is still contested with 6 days to go before the Democratic convention there. Also should note that Indiana, has a Libertarian Party as well, and their chair, Evan McMahon, has been selected the national chair of the Libertarian Party at their convention in Grand Rapids last weekend. So, Blythe, let's talk about Diego. Poor guy.
Oh, poor Diego. No, he's a glutton for punishment. I mean, it does not matter what happens on June 20th. Every single one of them are complicit in where we are in Indiana. They got us here. They were part of it. They've been cheering it on. Most of those jokers were cheering on Diego up until like 24 hours ago. It's not going to cut it. I am so sick of people thinking Hoosiers are dumb enough to just completely ignore what's happening right now. They are not listening to us. They are not listening to the rural communities. People are angry. People are pissed. They're going down. They are going down.
And I think that Indiana Republicans, for their part, are smart enough to know when they've got a really bad candidate who is a liability in November, unlike the Texas Republicans, who apparently are a glutton for punishment and want to see their guy get embarrassed. But Chuck, on the Democratic side, good to have candidates in those two slots for comptroller and treasurer. It was a rough go to find people to take on that helm and run for those offices. Do you know and why is that?
I can't exactly speak to the exact nature of it, but when you're looking at challenging, kind of like you say, kind of an uphill battle, there you got to have the right person that wants to take that challenge on. People like Blythe and others that have been willing to say, "Hey, I'm here for it. I'm going to do it." And I think these two ladies are absolutely the ones that are in the right places to make the right moves at the right time. And I mean, we've got a fierce set of candidates moving forward. I mean, I don't have a better way to put it. I mean, I am hopeful for the first time in quite a long time to see true substantive change happen for Indiana in the right ways. We just got to get past these next little steps and make it happen.
And this blue wave in November, which hopefully is coming, you got to have people in every spot if you want to be able to ride that wave. And there's still time, I want to say till the beginning of July, for Democrats to be caucused in to run for some lower races where there's still a lot of open seats at the county levels. And there's still a couple state house seats that need candidates as well. But last thing I wanted to cover today, a couple stories out of Northwest Indiana, which I know neither of you guys are from there. I'm originally from up there, so I thought they were worth mentioning. Up in Gary, the city 27 years ago sued gun manufacturers to for their role in the gun violence problem in the city there. Now the state Supreme Court this week voted 4-1 to let the lawsuit die, effectively ending that case after Republican legislators passed 5 separate laws over the course of 25 years, specifically designed to kill it. The president of the Brady Organization Against Gun Violence put it plainly, quote, "The gun industry defendants got the legislators whose campaigns they fund to pass 5 separate laws over 25 years to end legitimate lawsuits like Gary's." Now, also up in that region, the police chief of New Chicago, Earl Mayo, faces 8 felony charges after allegedly stealing a gun seized as evidence in a criminal case, altering its tracing information, and selling it to a pawn shop in Hobart, then asking a fellow officer to buy it back and retrieve suppressed firearms from his home. New Chicago is a town of only about 1,900. They have placed Mayo on administrative leave, with Lake County Police taking over duties there in that town. The Democratic nominee for sheriff of Lake County, Jerry Williams, is Mayo's father. Chuck, we've got a police corruption problem in this state. Obviously, down in Clark County, Jamie Knoll, the sheriff there. We've seen a couple other sheriffs get in trouble down here in southern Indiana recently. The Democratic sheriff up in Lake County, not the previous one, but the one before him, he did time in federal prison for bribery and corruption. What's going on?
I don't know if I can give you a really good answer. I think to some degree, I think it's a point of when you have as much power as a sheriff does, I think it can influence those that are susceptible to it. I can say that here in Hancock County, we have for the first time, we have a Democratic sheriff's candidate running, which I am ecstatic to see happen. It's going to be a really interesting race because he's a very principled individual. But those are the kind of folks that need to step forward. And, whether it's our side or their side, folks need to be held accountable for their poor choices. If they break the law, then hold them accountable. I mean, end all be all of that story. But we have to put the right people in the right races to be those institutional leaders to guide the ships forward. And sheriffs have a wide, they're one of the top law enforcement officials in a county. They matter. So we have to make sure that we're doing it right and encouraging them to do the right things with the right accountabilities.
Blythe, you've been up to the region on your 92 county tour of the state. Are they talking about this sort of thing up there?
I'll be honest with you. So I was up in Gary again this past Wednesday. I think it was like my 5th trip there, 14th to Lake County. That did not get brought up, but I will say, I mean, there's a reason why we're seeing this ebb and flow happen. This is just another spoke on the wheel that is a systemic problem. And it is not going to happen overnight where we get rid of it, much like Texas, right? We've got ugly money funding a Democrat there. He won. Is it ideal? No. Clearly it's happening here too. And going forward, this is where it's most important for us to hold everybody, regardless of political affiliation or regardless of personal relationship, accountable for their actions and their donations and standing up for what they say they're going to do. Clearly this slipped through the cracks, but as someone I was military police, I took that career path very seriously. And it is really hard to go into something like that where you think you're supporting people and helping people and only to see like, oh my God, this person is just as terrible as that, XYZ said. So it's part of the system, and it's unfortunate that this is happening. Particularly to someone of color. It is so frustrating.
So, lot this week. Thank you both for joining me. Blythe, if we've only got 6 days before the convention here, if folks want to help you do something about the systemic problems we have in this state, how can they help you out? Where can they find you?
Yep. BlythePotter.com is my website. Talk to your delegates. If you need help getting in contact with them, let us know. They vote for you. And this race could really set their trajectory for the state of Indiana, not just Democrats, on a very, very good playing field going forward if I'm able to secure the nomination. We have a plan, and we have been supporting down ballot candidates financially and otherwise. We continue to do so. We do have a ground game that I'm arguing could be better than what we saw in 2008 and more sustainable. So have those conversations, share this information. It is very important, not just for the party, but for the future of Indiana.
Very good. Chuck, shamelessly promote yourself.
Absolutely. So on June 3rd, I'm hosting a speaker series with our sheriff's candidate, James Calvert. That'll be at 7:00. We'll have it live on Zoom. Just look at our website, HancockIndianaDems.com. Look for our speaker series, get on the newsletter, and just look for more great interviews coming up. We actually just had one with Stephanie Jo Yoakum, who's running for District 88. Loved it. awesome lady, and I can't wait to see her kick Jeter out on his tail end. That's going to be awesome.
Very good. And of course, folks, you can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Send me a DM, any of those with your feedback. And we can't do any of this without you. Please support our work and the rest of the network here at progressiveindiana.net. Follow us all on social media at the full spelled out name, Progressive Indiana Network, on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, that is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Once again, thanks to Blythe and Chuck for joining us today. Donate and volunteer for Blythe. Make sure you're following Chuck online. He's got a podcast too. Like, share, comment, and leave a review for us. Please, let's keep building a radically democratic Indiana together. Until next time, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers signing off from Bloomington. Love each other, Indiana.